Welcome one, welcome all, and welcome to a bonus honest review. It's your clear favourite host, Connor, and from the first time on the channel, I'm tackling a review of a full series. However, it's quite possibly one of the most versatile, intriguing, and creative series Britain has ever produced, inside number 9. This is going to be a bumper-sized meal deal, reviewing each individual episode from the latest series, but to give a little bit of context, I'm going to briefly wrap up number 9 in a nutshell. Rhys Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton, two of the minds behind the League of Gentlemen and Psychoville, gave us inside number 9 back in 2014 as a black comedy anthology series. I'm a massive fan of anthologies anyway, so this was right up my street. But number 9 also brings in two extra loves of mine than just the format: writing and acting. This is because Shearsmith and Pemberton write every single episode and star in every episode. Every episode's a different concept in a different genre, with Shearsmith and Pemberton playing completely different people, and it just shows off how good they are at both acting and writing. The number 9 refers to the location of the episode. Wherever it takes place, there's always a number 9 involved, whether it's the address number of a house or a room number on a train. We continuously jump into new number 9s, but because of that, most episodes take place in a small setting where it's the dialogue and story that drive the audience's attention. Another thing I'm a big fan of. Usually coming with guest stars, twist endings, and horror elements, number 9 has delivered some jaw-dropping episodes that I'll never forget and can watch multiple times without getting bored. As 5 series have gone by, number 9 has gradually picked up a progressively increasing following, to the point we've now just had the launch of series 6. And what better way to break it down than to, well, break it down. So let's kick off with episode 1, Wuthering Heist. This episode takes the form of a heist movie, but comedically breaks the fourth wall right from the off. We have Gemma Whelan as a narrator type figure, Collie, who also played Yara Greyjoy in Game of Thrones, who sets up the episode by saying, yep, this week's genre is enough for a drama teacher to have a wank to, but it's series 6, so it can get away with it at this point. Then a minor character walks up to her and she's like, oh, fuck, yep, here's a subplot. It's great. Everyone's masked up at a meeting point in an industrial setting that's straight out of Reservoir Dogs, and the plan is to steal £12 million worth of diamonds. I just love the structure here. It's taken elements of Wuthering Heights, with certain bits of dialogue having that Emily Bronte vibe to them, talking about lowly housemaids and delivering letters on my behalf. It's like Pemberton and Shearsmith sat down and just went, right, we've thought of a play on words for the episode title, let's slap these two genres together for a laugh and have Collie as a mediator who addresses the audience by pointing out stereotypes and flaws in the plot progression. Like, she gets given the letter to deliver to the doctor and says to the audience, I guess people have forgotten WhatsApp and emails exist now. Then Shearsmith's character enters, named Scaramouche, to which Arlo starts to quote Bohemian Rhapsody, but he gets bleeped out because they can't afford the copyright. The twist's revealed when Collie identifies that she's an undercover officer. Then, just like the aforementioned Reservoir Dogs, the next scene cuts to the aftermath of the theft, where we learn what happened through the dialogue. Shit gets real dark when Pantalone returns carrying the dead body of Hortensia, the subplot girl, and he slits Collie's throat, realising that she's the rat. It's been so light-hearted and jolly up to this point, and this moment came out of nowhere. Genuinely a shocking curveball for the tone. The show wraps up with everyone getting killed apart from Pantalone, who escapes with fake diamonds, and Arlo, who's left with the real ones. All in all, it's a daft yarn, but a fun way to start off a new series. It's probably the most meta episode inside number 9's ever produced, and that's saying something. It acknowledges its format and the show's reputation worldwide. Even BBC iPlayer gets referenced as a way people watch the show. It directly addresses its viewers who are dragged along for the ride. It's a great blend of physical comedy, wordplay, in-jokes, and references that fans of both parody genres will get, that combine together into a really fun experiment. Not the funniest episode of the show, but clearly Pemberton and Shearsmith threw their little book of puns at the script and slapped together an entertaining half an hour to kick off series 6. Episode 2, Simon Says. Here Pemberton plays a TV writer, Spencer Maguire, who's got back home after an incident at a club has ended in bloodshed, with Shearsmith playing Simon, the witness to film the event, and he just so happens to show up on his doorstep. Turns out Mr. Maguire has written a multi-award winning series, and Simon happens to be a superfan. We learn through the dialogue that the show, named The Ninth Circle, had a disappointing climax leading to an uproar by the fans, which hugely echoes the response to season 8 fate of Game of Thrones, which practically demolished the show's legacy in the eyes of many. Maguire here is essentially Benioff and Weiss, while Simon is, well, the internet. Also, the fact Simon has a podcast and is from Sunderland, fucking hell, I feel personally attacked. The next morning, Simon presents Maguire with a fan-written alternate finale for the Ninth Circle, from a book which he took from the body of the victim from the incident at the club. This is such a real-life thing. Well, not the dead body, but the fans trying to take over the story. If fans aren't happy about how their favourite show finishes, they'll post all kinds of ideas and concepts and fanfiction online about what the creators should have done. And stuff like that has even led to stuff like Justice League being completely remade by Zack Snyder, who was rallied behind by fans in their droves to #release the Snyder Cut. And now, after the film's success and clear improvements on the first attempt, we've now been hit with the #restore the Snyderverse push. Simon blackmails Maguire into meeting with his agent about creating a new version of the show's finale, with him as a co-writer, using the footage he filmed of the incident as his ace in the hole. Despite hating podcasts, Maguire is again goaded into being a guest on Simon's podcast, where Simon also ropes himself into having a role in the episode. But a spanner's thrown in the works when Gavin, the man who Maguire allegedly killed at the club, turns up at the gaff, ruining Simon's plans. So in return, Simon murders Gavin and then attempts to sleep with Maguire. Maguire fucks him up and suffocates him with a pillow in a scene that goes on for ages. It's brutal, like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest levels. But when Maguire leaves the room, Gavin is fine. It was all an act as a part of Simon's audition for the Ninth Circle. To cover up his tracks, Maguire kills off Gavin, and now he has all the success of the show back. With a book full to the brim of ideas keeping him going and 2 more seasons commissioned, he's living the high life. And all it cost him was 2 of his fans. Both Pemberton and Shea Smith are on top form in this one, particularly Shea Smith. As a person who's a part of the Doctor Who community, and with UTG, the horror community, I know how much these details mean to people, and if there's a disappointing end to something, it's the fans who are going to be the ones to think of the most logical ways those problems could have been stopped from happening. And this episode demonstrates the extreme end of the scale of the relationship between a show's fans and its creators. The writers see it as a job. Sure, they're passionate and creative, but it's also a 9-to-5 for them, whereas fan circles will cherish the tiniest of details of something for their entire lives, and that blurring of realities is always a complex one to live through. You're either going to be the fanboy or fangirl wetting yourself over meeting your heroes and embarrassing yourself, or you're going to be the person they're wetting themselves over, having been in this situation and met this exact type of fan thousands of times before. Simon Says does a great job of having a supercharged yet understandable take on the realm of fantasy fandoms and exploits it for a fun ride of gripping number 9 action. Episode 3. Lip Service. Partially lending itself to Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, Lip Service is a great investigation into a potential affair. Pemberton plays Felix Hughes, who checks into a cheap hotel ran by Shea Smith and hires a professional lip reader named Iris to observe his wife Brenda, whom he suspects is cheating on him with her boss Dimitri, a political figure. Following so far? Alright, let's go. The hotel is opposite a suite which the boss has booked for himself and Brenda, and the bulk of the episode is deciphering what she's up to. But the manager keeps interrupting like a nosy bastard who doesn't want any funny business, so the investigation is a farcical struggle from time to time. The spying is superbly done due to the fact we never see over the road. We only ever see and hear the 2 characters in the hotel room, so all of the narrative is compressed into the information we receive from the lip reading, and it gets really twisty. Brenda calls Felix, and we begin to learn that the relationship is a bit more complex. It's less of a cheating scenario and more the feeling of a couple who are separated, not yet divorced, with threats of a restraining order on Felix. The flow of the episode shifted entirely at this moment, though was prefaced by hints that Felix was taking a shine to Iris and vice versa, so that perhaps ultimately he would be the one to cheat. It's miraculous how intrigued the dialogue makes you, making you completely reliant on the words being translated and interpreted, with you having to interpret the context for them. And then the bombshell drops. Felix Felix and Brenda were never actually married. They separated 8 months ago. Again, we the audience have made assumptions on what Felix's situation is, and the script has masterfully thrown us down the wrong path, leading to a dead end. But some light at the end of Felix's tunnel comes from the re-emergence of him getting together with Iris. However, it wouldn't be inside number 9 without another spanner in the works. So, while she's having a piss, Felix spots a notification on Iris's phone from an app that he uses, and a USB stick with his initials written on it containing footage of him. After interrogating her, Felix learns that she's been put into place by Brenda's boss to transcribe the footage, as he's been identified as a potential security threat to the boss's campaigns. However, while investigating Felix, Iris has become very fond of him, and the two eventually realise their love for each other during this dire situation. But suddenly there's a gunshot from across the street. Felix rushes to the window, fearing his wife's safety, shouting her name. Iris throws the bedside hairdryer for Felix to catch and open fire. Holy shit, this was yet another huge turn. The whole time Iris has been an undercover agent, and every tiny detail in the scenario has been played in Iris's favour, leading to the assassination of Brenda's boss Dimitri and the killing of Felix as a cover-up. What an episode! On repeat viewings you'll be able to spot the hallmarks leading to the final outcome, such as Iris opening the window saying she needs to get some air when Felix interrogates her, obviously opening it for when he gets taken out, and even Iris grabbing a miniature bottle of vodka to drink from the minibar while she's explaining herself is brought up again at the end to suggest Felix was intoxicated at the time of assassination. Even the fire drill, which the manager discusses earlier, it's seemingly trivial at the time due to the quirkiness of the character, but turns out it was scheduled so that the assassination took place during the fire drill, so the sound covered up the shots. Pemberton and Shearsmith have smashed it with this one, proving just how incredible they can be at providing multiple twists and turns and peppering details of continuity throughout, where you can reflect on their significance on subsequent watches. Plus, the acting here is yet again superb, especially on Pemberton, who is a remarkably underrated serious actor. Yeah, he does comedy incredibly well, but when it comes to showing grief, loss, fear, worry, and shock, he can leave the planet with his abilities. This is easily one of the show's best episodes in recent years. Episode 4, Hurry Up and Wait. Shearsmith here plays an actor named James who has just arrived on location at a caravan park to film the latest ITV crime drama. He's plonked right into one of the static caravans being temporarily used as a green room, but the family that live in the caravan are still on site. First is Bev, a woman holding a toy baby with shaving cream over her mustache area who is conversationally awkward. And then her mother, Pauline McLynn, pops in. Holy shit, Mrs. Doyle from Father Ted, and she's barely aged a day. Love the little Easter egg that she goes to make James a cup of tea as well. That was fab. Poor James is just sitting trying to go over his lines, but keeps getting interrupted and is progressively irritated. The dad arrives, Pemberton, and as someone who generally hates toilet humour, when he starts having a shit and on the telly there's a snooker game where the brown gets spotted, okay, that's pretty good. The dad reveals that he hates the police and that he's had people round going through his computer, hinting there's something a little sinister going on with the family. Turns out the TV show being filmed is based on a real story about the death/disappearance of a baby, Ryan, in the same area, and the family are suspicious while talking about what really happened. So we begin with a spiral down into a mystery of if this family had some kind of deeper involvement in the original events. Also arriving at the green room we get Adrian Dunbar, famously known as Line of Duty's Ted Hastings, who plays himself in this episode, one of the main actors in the crime show being filmed. Hilariously, Dunbar manages to rework the script so that James goes from 3 lines to just saying the word yeah. Even calls him Justin after they've just been introduced. He's a complete arsehole who wants to be the main focus. It's a great caricature of Dunbar, and feels a lot like Extras when you get certain actors playing larger-than-life versions of themselves. A few coincidences start to stack up. Bev said earlier on that it's her birthday. Then it's revealed that today is the birthday of the baby Ryan, and James finds hair removal cream in the bathroom. Plus, Bev has assumedly applied that cream to her mustache, and her mum called her a tomboy earlier. Plus, in the script, the baby's dad is said to have a red tracksuit, which Pemberton is wearing in a family photo in the bathroom. Then, after going into Bev's bedroom, James finds a shawl with a dinosaur on it, also described in the original story. All of this combines so that James believes Bev is actually the baby Ryan, all grown up, and has been gender swapped sleepaway camp style. James actually starts to act like a real copper, breaking down his investigation and his findings, but falls flat on his ass when he's got it completely wrong and the shawl was just the prop shawl for the show. And he reveals that Bev is all woman. Dunbar comes back in, and now James has no spoken lines whatsoever, and while watching the episode on TV, now it looks like Bev might be behind it all along, as the doll she's been tending to the entire episode has a skeletal hand. Is it baby Ryan hid inside? Honestly, this one wasn't great, probably the first fad of the series, but in the anthology format, you're always going to end up with the odd one. I do like the strange mysterious family concept and how the show being filmed is based on a real story, well, real in terms of this episode's canon, which that family knows about, so there are crossings over to the reality of the story and the script version of the story. It's quite a dark story too, a missing baby where nobody knows who did it or what happened. It had the potential to be so much more dark and sinister, but I think the addition of Adrian Dunbar as a caricature of an egotistical successful actor added a bit too much comedy to the situation. Don't get me wrong, Inside Number 9 works so well because of the dark comedy elements, but I find that this episode could have been better without these comedy elements, because with a more serious tone, the suspense could have had a far greater impact than it delivered. The little attentions to detail in the plot, like the hair removal cream and shawl as red herrings, were good, but coming straight after lip service, arguably one of the most effective uses of tiny important details in the show's history, Hurry Up and Wait was always going to be an uphill battle by comparison. Perhaps if it came slightly earlier in the series, it could have been more impactful, but coming after such a brilliant piece of television, it had a lot to live up to. It was okay, but definitely not one of the show's strongest or weakest, just a bit of a middle for diddle episode that had a bit of an imbalanced tone overall. Episode 5. How Do You Plead? Sir Derek Jacobi becomes the only actor other than Pemberton and Shearsmith to return to the show with more than one character, as he previously starred in a voiceover role in the utterly brilliant The Devil of Christmas, but here we get the English veteran in the flesh. He plays an incredibly stubborn old man who is on his last legs, living his remaining days hooked to cables and machines in an apartment. Pemberton takes a backseat role as the lift operator, while Shearsmith takes the bulk of the work, playing Urban, one of the nurses who cares for Jacobi's character Webster. In his previous life, Webster was an incredibly successful barrister who went undefeated in his cases for 45 years, earning him the nickname the Lion of the Bailey. Urban gives him a hypothetical scenario to get Webster's legal juices flowing again, and he succeeds amazingly, rekindling the fire of his skills, but takes a turn for the worst when getting overexcited by coughing his guts up. The score for this episode, in this scene in particular and throughout the episode, is exquisite, one of my favourites in the show's history, a gorgeously haunting violin score that echoes Einaudi's score for The Father with Anthony Hopkins. It just smacks you with this ferocity of dying and the inevitability of withering away. Urban reveals a tragedy from his childhood that inspired him to become a nurse, as a friend at school died in front of him choking on an orange, and since then he wanted to save people, symbolically saving his friend every time in the process. It leads to one of the scariest scenes ever in Inside Number 9, where Urban has a nightmare about it, his friend sitting choking in an armchair before grabbing Urban and vomiting orange all over him. It's paced, framed, filmed and scored like a true horror scene. It's magically crafted. Prior to this, Webster warned that in his file of facts he had a case file that haunted him to this day, the case of the Crown versus Andrew Waite, which Urban manages to find. Webster reveals he let Waite inmate, who everyone knew was guilty of murder, walk free by immorally obtaining fake evidence for the case. Here on out, we get some unexpected supernatural elements when Webster unlocks a small chest featuring a contract that he signed 70 years ago, and hints that this contract gave him his overnight success at the cost of being visited on the stroke of midnight. But by who? Pemberton emerges from his elevator from earlier with a sinister smirk and glowing red eyes. It's the devil, Mephistopheles, coming to claim what's his, Webster's life. But as a criminal law mastermind, Webster has another trick up his sleeve, citing the law of succession to imply that Urban should be taken instead, as his kind angelic soul would burn much brighter than his, and Mephistopheles likes it. After signing the contract, Jacoby is in the clear, on the mend, and will live another day. Or will he? Nope, the old switcheroo. Urban is now the more evil one, as the orange incident from earlier was a false truth. He was the school bully and murdered the boy by shoving an orange down his throat for fun. So instead, it's Webster who is going down. Shame about the slightly off-looking CGI on the lift falling down at the end, but hey ho. It's a BBC Two budget. This was a really fun one. Jacoby on fine form as well as both creators. There were some great one-liners in there, like Urban having some age-related quips at Webster being an antique, and when he gets the name Mephistopheles wrong and instead calls Pemberton Mr. Mistopheles, referencing cats. Mwah, that was sublime. The horror elements were so perfect and well done. I actually think the gut punch of the twist with the supernatural ending and the weight of both Webster's and Urban's guilt didn't have enough breathing space to sink in, and this is one of the few Inside Number 9 concepts I think would have had more impact in the twist if the setup had been slightly longer, maybe a 45 minutes to an hour long, just to give some more screen time to explore each character's guilt and their shame of their wrongdoings. It was overall a really fun one, and you can tell everyone here relished their parts. Yet another solid addition to Inside Number 9's pure horror episodes with some incredibly memorable scenes and wonderful editing. And now it's time for the series finale, episode 6. Last Night of the Proms. The Last Night of the Proms, for those who don't know, is a very famous event in which a live orchestra performs at the Royal Albert Hall and is celebrated as a quintessentially British event, with many people throwing celebratory parties, such as this one. A family are all putting up the bunting and donning their Union Jacks, most notably the great Julian Glover. Always a pleasure seeing him in anything, the only actor to have been in 4 of the world's biggest franchises: Star Wars, James Bond, Indiana Jones, and Game of Thrones. But here he's just chilling out in a cardigan on the sofa and a little hat. But the whole time, while we get some typical family chat, there's a scruffy looking man lingering suspiciously outside. You can sense by the dialogue exchanges here that Shea Smith's character, Brian, has in recent times come out as gay, or is suspected to be gay, despite having a wife and son. An uncommon thing, but something that is very much real, and it seems like this quite traditional family isn't taking to it in the most respectful way. Brian's wife lets the homeless man in, turns out he's a foreigner with limited English, and sounds like she wants to have it off with him on the basis that her husband is no longer interested in her, or any woman. Brian is very much a lover of music, who cares for and appreciates the art form and its nuances, while the rest of the family associate the music to more trivial things, like when the composition Hornpipe plays, and it's recognised as being the Blue Peter theme more than being Hornpipe. And then Pemberton's wife gets the name of one of the pieces wrong, which also pisses off Brian. Brian is very much a purist, believes music should be analog, vinyl, not compressed onto iPods, and O Fortuna shouldn't be widely recognised as the Old Spice music or the X Factor music. He's totally against the way the world has bastardised something so skillful and beautiful and warped it so that the general public hear classical music in a bubblegum popular music way. Julian Glover keeps spurting out vulgar one-liners, which is hilarious. It's got the same vibe as the police officer from Hot Fuzz, who now and again just says stuff like tits during important briefs. His dialogue is limited, but come on, he's in his late 80s, so Pemberton and Shea Smith have absolutely made the best of his limitations in terms of how they've written his character with a low amount of lines but a huge amount of impact. We begin getting hints that everyone apart from Brian has slightly racist tendencies or have very patriotic morals that generally look down on anyone but the English, and it's given subtle support by the name of their dog being Boris, and even when Rule Britannia comes on, Glover is able to sing the lyrics, despite up until this point, the words he can say being so limited. He's got Rule Britannia that deeply engraved in him that he can recite them through his medication's power. Brian has a plan to smash through the barrier of English pride by doing a DNA ancestry test for Pemberton's wife's birthday, revealing her to have 62% German heritage, and that Glover very much may not be her real father. Then the homeless man from earlier enters the chat, and there are sneaking suspicions that he very well may be the second coming of Jesus. Long hair, beard, speaks little English, white clothing, makes the food on the buffet reappear after it's been eaten, blood on the palm of his hands. Earlier the son Oliver drinks some water that happens to be alcoholic, and he is denied 3 times by Brian's wife. Glover thinks he's there to take him away to the grave, so he unexpectedly gets up and smashes him with a bloody garden pitchfork. Then even Brian gets in on the action with a letter opener, all while Pomp and Circumstance plays in the background. Then the song Jerusalem plays, fitting with the Jesus theme, while the family tidy the house, roll up the body in the Union Jack, and put it in the car boot. Everyone has a chat and find that all the things they are linked with Jesus were likely coincidence. The stigmata in his hands likely from a smashed glass, the water into wine being because of Pemberton using those bottles for his home brewing, the extra food on the table coming from the chest freezer. In the misery of the situation, Pemberton starts singing Auld Lang Syne, and the man appears as an angel in the window. Maybe he was Jesus after all. This finale was quite a nice change from the norm, as typically they end the series with the main horror themed episode, but here they've shaken it up in a poignant way. In Britain, we've definitely had a lot of turmoil in recent years, with the Brexit situation causing a divide in the opinions of the masses regarding the issues of patriotism, and I think that subject matter suits very well for a number 9 episode, and right now was a great time to pull the trigger on this matter. I was really invested in how Brian was the family scapegoat, a man very much of his morals and being open to change, such as in his sexuality, and by being open to the idea of reversing toxic Britishness, while the rest of the family are deeply rooted in their patriotism. Then the reveal that their family tree may not be as pure as they would hope was a real thorn on the rose of their English Garden of Eden, and I thought it would lead down a darker path, with the family questioning their heritage, or perhaps learning to accept it and overcome their previous closed-mindedness. There was a lot that could have happened with this story to reflect those messages and really make the audience think for themselves. And then the Jesus plot happened. I actually think that this magnetized the episode away from a really provocative climax. I know that Inside Number 9 loves to lead you in one direction and then pull the rug, and most of the time the change is a brilliant bit of unexpectedness, but here I actually think it sucked so much weight out of the themes being explored up until that point, especially themes that are so potent in this current climate. What began and ran as a sociological fable about what it means to be British, with the episode's score being replaced by the instruments of the most famous orchestral event in the calendar, last night of the Proms dropped a very important ball. No doubt a lot of people will love this twist, but I feel that the first half of the episode definitely gave me the vibes this is going to mean so much to so many people, or get people talking, and now I feel all this episode's going to be referred to as is the Jesus episode. So, there we go, another series of Inside Number 9 in the bag, and on the whole, I enjoyed it. I feel like with every series of Number 9, same as every anthology series ever made, the format is always going to have a lot of people debating, and that not every episode is going to blow your socks off, but the fact all 6 episodes here are not only vastly different to each other, but vastly different to all other Number 9 episodes so far, makes it an incredible achievement, and it remains to be Britain's most versatile show. Pemberton and Shearsmith are two of the best showrunners on the planet. Nobody is doing what they do, nobody has done what they've done, and it's always a pleasure to see what they've come up with when they get round to another full series. Let me know in the comments what you made of Series 6, what your favourite and least favourite episodes, moments or characters were, and most importantly, if you'd like me to cover any more Inside Number 9 content, which I'm sure I will. Until then though, thank you for checking out this video. It's the first time we've attempted a review on the channel of this size, so it was a good experiment, but a great series to try with. So if you've made it this far, hats off to you. I'm Connor from Unleash the Ghouls, and I'll see you next time, possibly Inside Number 9.